So this is my weekly update for this week. So I got two things. One is the good old pipeline editor, which is just stringing along on the side right now. That's down to the last MR, at least for the view component that can be used. And following that, I need to actually use that wizard inside GitLab pages. So I'm preparing that at the moment. This has gotten its first review, so I'm confident that we get this merged this week, by the end of this week, hopefully, which would be great. Other than that, I have been working a lot on Cloudflare integration. So this is basically just an abstract on how we're going to achieve that and where do I want to go with that Cloudflare integration. So first off, why am I doing this? For one, I think the performance gain of using Cloudflare is probably something that we should strive for, because I've demoed that on an earlier update, that the performance for GitLab pages sites outside the US isn't that great, mostly because the pages is running on a US server and we don't have a CDN. So using Cloudflare's CDN caching would probably help a lot with performance. Second is we're doing a lot of things that we built in-house that Cloudflare has been doing much more professionally for a longer time, like things like the DDoS protection. I know that the Pages team has spent a huge amount of effort with protecting against DDoS recently, and is investing a lot of time into monitoring and utilizing Cloudflare's services there would probably be a benefit, as well as server cost, because right now we're paying all this bandwidth into our Google instance, but it would probably be beneficial to use Cloudflare caching. That would take a lot of bandwidth from GitLab servers, but in the end, it will replace it with Cloudflare costs. So we'd have to check out whether that's actually beneficial or not. But even if it's not that more expensive, it's probably worthwhile, because I think one thing that we can't do at all right now is using workers. So we don't have a service like that at GitLab where we can run basically all kinds of serverless functions and applications that need a JavaScript runtime on a server, like server-side renderings, apps, Next.js, Nux.js, Remix, the newest one, but also Astro, Quasar, SvelteKit. There's probably a huge market that is left untouched by GitLab right now. So if we can utilize Cloudflare workers to run those JavaScript runtimes, it's probably the easiest way into that market and would probably be a huge benefit to Jamstack developers on GitLab. So how do I imagine that Cloudflare integration? I think there's two alternative approaches that have some kind of overlap, but UX-wise look completely different, and will probably have a completely different cost structure and everything. So putting this into Cloudflare integration is probably a stretch, because they're completely different things, although they both utilize the Cloudflare API to achieve that. So one is, option A is connecting to Cloudflare on an instance level. And I think previous explorations in that regard have probably looked mostly at this option, where we as GitLab have a Cloudflare account, or whoever has a GitLab self-hosted instance has a Cloudflare account. And during setup, somewhere you're configuring, hey, this is my Cloudflare account, here's an API token, go have fun. And whenever a repo updates a pages site, this just goes directly to that account, and it's hidden behind the scenes. So the user doesn't really know or care that there's Cloudflare powering all this. It's kind of behind the scenes. It's just Cloudflare does the delivering, Cloudflare does the DNS routing and whatnot. Service SSL provisioning, and I don't know what else is all involved. So it's basically very much behind the scenes. The upside is, since it's behind the scenes, it's probably a very, very low effort on the side of the user. So the end result could very much look, it's very integrated. Like there's just one single button in the GitLab UI that says, run this remix app now. Click, and somehow it's running. It's probably not that easy, but that's the end goal. But obviously, it would probably cost a lot of money, because whoever maintains that instance Cloudflare account has to pay for all those zones and all the access to it. That said, we're doing this with GitLab Pages right now, just paying it to Google instead of Cloudflare, but it's just a caveat that's in there. So there's another option that may be a little easier to start with, but the implementation looks probably quite different, and the user experience is a bit more complicated. That's an option where user can connect their existing Cloudflare account to their project. So every project might have their own Cloudflare account, can create it, and they can obtain the API token, and they use the GitLab user interface to save that API token. And then during build deploy, GitLab communicates with Cloudflare to configure a few settings. In the end, it's not that much different from doing, right now you can do this manually using the GitLab CI YAML file, using pipelines. So you can already use this API token as an environment variable, and then use a pipeline to deploy something to Cloudflare, even if it's hosted on GitLab Pages. Just use Cloudflare for caching, or communicate with Cloudflare that it should do a cache refresh. Same with workers, you could compile it and then deploy it to Cloudflare using a pipeline. So I'm not quite sure what, how much more benefit I can do here, other than helping the users set up their pipeline in this. The upside of this option is configurability, which is something I have been saying a long time. That is the USP of GitLab, where users can have their own interface to Cloudflare. They can interact with the monitoring themselves. So they have a much more fine-grained control over the details, but obviously the user experience wouldn't be as one-click as option A. Another upside, it wouldn't cost GitLab a single penny to do this, because obviously it's the user's Cloudflare accounts. So in the end, option B would look very much like what Shri is doing with the Google Cloud, like one-click integration, get set up quickly. But from then on, you're basically a bit more on your own because we helped you set it up. But now go ahead and deal with everything yourselves. I think in the end, we should do probably both solutions because they can easily coexist. The question is, what's more important to focus on right now? And I don't know that yet. I'm open to feedback on that. I'm currently exploring both options, so I'm having a play around with the API of Cloudflare, trying to figure out what can be done. For example, I know there's a little bit difficulties with connecting domains. So, for example, CNaming domains to a Cloudflare instance, to a Cloudflare zone is an enterprise option. And whatever I do, I would like to stay in Cloudflare's free tier interface, so that, I don't know, someone that's self-hosting on Cloudflare can get started easily and doesn't straight away need to buy an enterprise subscription on Cloudflare just to make GitLab work with Cloudflare. I think that would just be an entrance barrier that's not helpful. So yeah, I would like to stay in the free tier. So any API functionality should stay within one of those. But yeah, I'll have to figure the details out. What is possible right now? What is possible within the free tier? What are the caveats? So that's my work that I've started doing this week and will probably do a lot more of in the next couple of weeks. Any feedback, Darby?
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt while you were presenting, so and you actually answered a bunch of questions that I had along the way too, regarding like custom domains and things like that. You mentioned the sort of parallel to the 5-minute production app, and the other sort of parallel that I was thinking of as you were talking through this is the way that we have our Kubernetes integration set up. So it's a similar process in which you go to create a cluster, and you, and now on GitLab, it didn't used to be this way, but now you can use both Amazon EKS and Google GKE. So like the option B is actually kind of a nice way to think about it if you can decouple the like provider from the integration, so that, like, you know, say there's some other, you know, Cloudflare competitor that we would want to integrate with, like there could actually be, you know, like an opportunity to make that an option that users could choose. So I mean, I think like option B, from, you know, from my less informed perspective, seems like at least a good first iteration, versus option A, which is kind of like almost trying to boil the ocean and do all the things, and maybe that kind of prevents us from being able to like iterate more quickly and get kind of feedback that way. So those are kind of my first reactions to kind of what you showed here.
That's pretty much what I was thinking as well.
Yeah.
Initially, but right now I'm in a position where I think this is, as a first iteration, actually a bit easier, maybe, because it needs less work to achieve. But I'm still not decided yet. It's a first feeling that I have, and I think while playing around with the API, I'm probably arriving at a solution that tells me which one is easier to have as a first iteration. As I said, ultimately, we might have both options coexist, but I don't know.
I could see situations where, I don't know, depending on a customer, they would want to have it in their Cloudflare account versus like a globally shared one for some reason. But you know, that's not a reason not to do the other way if the other way is a faster path to iteration.
Yeah, I mean, you can still do the option B right now, just as it is. You could do it right now. It's just more setup, and what I'd be working on is a better user flow. So even if we do this, I mean, this would probably cover all GitLab Pages instances from the get-go, more or less. And this would probably be a more gradual onboarding onto this.
Yeah.
And I'd say probably 80% of users probably won't do that at all. The whole long tail of pages will probably not do that whole integration thing. So it's probably just for pro users. Whereas if we want the benefits of DDoS protection and server cost and whatnot, we'd probably want as many projects on Cloudflare as possible. So that would speak to option A. But I think that's actually not even my the incubation engineering way to think about it. That's probably much more infrastructure.
Sure.
An infrastructure question. My question is actually, which one is easier to implement right now?
Okay. Yeah. So the other question, I guess, that came to mind, and I've not looked into this in quite some time, but what does the kind of competitive landscape look like in terms of other providers in the space and like what their CDN capabilities are? Is it kind of, you know, I guess, do they sort of connect and integrate with Cloudflare and things like that, or do they kind of have their own, or is it you know, so dependent on the provider?
Competition never exposes their CDN thing. Like if you go to Netlify, you won't find, I don't know if they're running their own service, for example, or if they're using Fastly in the background. I'm not sure, but you don't interact with that at all. You're interacting with Netlify. Same with Versal. I mean, one of the competitors in that regard is Cloudflare itself. So Cloudflare has the Pages offering, which is exactly what we're doing. So yeah, I'd say if we're going the exposing the Cloudflare thing, we go a very special way, but it's always one that I think GitLab has been very strong at providing, like giving the users control over, very, very fine-grained control over the whole setup. Just bringing it all together and have it play well with each other. So yeah.
Okay. So maybe so if I think it's just so I understand, like if I look at the like Netlify and others, like as a user, like the expectation there is I don't have to fiddle with my CDN. It's just built in. I can just expect that it's going to be globally distributed and there's no configuration. It's like, it's totally like opaque to me. Like I don't see any of that. It just happens. Is that true?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I mean, so that's an interesting way to look at this too. Like the kind of the user's expectation from other products is like, I don't have to worry about it. So I just get it, you know? And so maybe that is, maybe it makes it easier to compare when someone is looking at different products. But to your point, maybe the configurability is a feature too that that some customers might want. So it'd be interesting to try to get some feedback on that specifically. Cool.
Yeah.
I don't think I have any other questions. I think this is a really great description and detailed breakdown of these different approaches. So thanks for putting that together.
Yeah, I mean, this is a whole epic. So there's probably a lot of issues that are going to spawn from this. Right now I'm in that exploration phase, and let's see how it goes. Probably more on this from next week onward.
Cool.
All right.
All right.
Well, then thanks for joining for the first live recorded update.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. All right. Bye.
See ya.
Yeah.